Collision course. The acid rain had finally stopped when Nix Vanner emerged from his shelter, wiping condensation from his mapping equipment. 3 days of being trapped in this cave had put him behind schedule, and the Frontier Corps wouldn't wait forever. As the premier human cartographer assigned to the drift zones, he couldn't afford delays, especially not with tensions rising between humanity and the Sephiroths. Atmospheric toxicity at acceptable levels. His wrist unit chirped. Recommend respiratory precautions for extended exposure. Nix adjusted his breathing filter and continued mapping the twisted landscape. The borderlands between human territory and Sephiran crystal fields were treacherous, constantly shifting due to gravitational anomalies. Only someone with his intuitive sense of spatial relations could navigate them properly. He crested a ridge and froze. Below, 3 drift raiders surrounded a slender figure whose skin reflected light in prismatic patterns. A Sephiran, far from their protected territories. The raiders' intentions were clear from the neural disruptors in their hands. "Crystalline fetch a high price," one raider growled. "The resonance from your kind can power ships for months." The Sephiran stood tall, her translucent fingers spread in a gesture of diplomacy. "This violation of the boundary treaties will not be tolerated," she said, her voice melodic yet firm. "I am Leora, ambassador to the human collectives." Nix cursed under his breath. An ambassador? If she were harmed, it could trigger the very conflict both species had avoided for decades. Without thinking further, he activated his terrain manipulator. The ground beneath 2 raiders suddenly shifted, sending them tumbling down a newly formed slope. The third turned, weapon raised, but Nix was faster. A well-placed shot from his pulse pistol sent the man crumpling. "We should move," Nix called to the Sephiran. "More will come when these don't report back." The Sephiran, Leora, studied him with eyes that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. "You intervened despite the risk. Interesting. Just doing my job." "Keeping the peace," Nix replied, though it was a stretch of his actual duties. "Let's get you to safer ground." They traveled in tense silence until reaching a secure outcropping. There, Leora turned to face him fully. Up close, her features were mesmerizing. Delicate crystalline structures beneath smooth skin, hair like spun silver with bioluminescent strands that pulsed with her emotions. "You are Nix Vanner." "I know of your work," she said suddenly. "Your mapping has helped maintain the boundaries between our peoples. How do you—" "We observe. We learn." Her head tilted slightly. "I came seeking someone with your skills, though I didn't expect to find you directly." Before Nix could respond, the distant whine of raider vessels cut through the air. Leora's expression changed, determination hardening her features. She stepped forward and placed her hand against his chest. A warm sensation spread through him like sunlight beneath his skin. "By the ancient laws of my people," she announced, her voice carrying a strange resonance, "I claim this human, Nix Vanner, as my sole guardian. He is mine by right of life debt and necessity." Nix felt something intangible snap into place between them, a connection he couldn't explain but instantly recognized as profound. "What did you just do?" he whispered, heart racing. Leora's luminescent strands pulsed brighter. "I've bound us together in the eyes of my people. It was necessary," her voice softened. "And now, no Sephiran can harm you, nor can any who respect our ways separate us." The approaching engines grew louder as Nix realized his simple mapping mission had just become infinitely more complicated. Sacred bonds, the security checkpoint at the human settlement of Nova Haven, hummed with tension as Nix guided Leora through the scanner gates. Her crystalline biology triggered every alarm, causing guards to raise their weapons until Nix stepped between them. "She's under my protection," he stated firmly. "Ambassador Leora of the Sephiran Collective. Check your protocols." The chief security officer, Mira Senet, approached with a scowl. "Your protection? Since when do cartographers escort alien dignitaries?" Her eyes narrowed at the faint luminescent connection visible between Nix and Leora when they stood close. A subtle thread of light, only visible in dim settings. "Since this morning," Nix replied tersely. "We need transport to the central diplomatic hub." After tense negotiations and several priority verification codes, they were granted passage and assigned a private transport unit. Once alone, Nix turned to Leora, questions burning in his eyes. "You need to explain this soul guardian business," he demanded. "I feel connected to you. Like I can sense your presence even when I'm not looking." Leora's bioluminescent strands pulsed with shades of blue and violet. The bond of Soul Guardian is sacred among my people. It's usually reserved for lifelong commitments between Sephirans who choose to protect and complement each other. She paused, her crystalline features catching the light. For a human to bear this connection is unprecedented. And you didn't think to ask first? Nyx ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident. There wasn't time, she replied simply. And I needed to ensure your cooperation. Cooperation for what exactly? Leora's expression grew grave. War is coming, Nyx Vanner. Extremists on both sides are manufacturing conflicts at our borders. 3 diplomatic envoys have been assassinated in the past month. Her fingers, 5 on each hand, delicate yet strong, traced a pattern on the transport window. I seek the Harmony Crystal, an ancient artifact of my people. It was hidden in the drift zones generations ago. And you need a mapper, Nyx concluded, understanding dawning. The best one, not just any mapper, one who can feel the shifting of the zones intuitively. The crystal's location changes with the gravitational tides. Only someone with your particular talents can find it. The transport hummed beneath them as Nyx processed her words. This bond, what does it actually do? It connects our life forces, Leora explained. You'll sense my emotions as I sense yours. In time we may share thoughts. It offers protection. My people cannot harm you without facing exile. Her eyes met his. It also means I cannot leave your side until the bond is dissolved or fulfilled. Nyx felt a flutter of something through the bond. Uncertainty. Perhaps even vulnerability from this seemingly composed ambassador. And how is it fulfilled? He asked softly. By completing the purpose for which it was formed, she replied, finding the Harmony Crystal. Later that night, in the diplomatic quarters assigned to them, Nyx awoke to find Leora standing by the window, her silhouette outlined by the 3 moons. The bond between them pulsed with her distress. What's wrong? He asked, moving to stand beside her. My superiors are displeased. They didn't authorize the Soul Guardian bond. Her voice was steady, but Nyx could feel her concern. Some believe I've compromised myself by connecting with a human. Without thinking, Nyx placed his hand on her shoulder. The contact sent a warm current through their bond, causing Leora to look up in surprise. For a moment, her composed diplomatic facade fell away, revealing someone younger and less certain than she appeared. We'll find your crystal, he promised, and then we can both go back to our normal lives. But even as he said it, something inside him doubted whether anything would ever be normal again. The warmth of their connection had already begun to feel necessary, like a limb he hadn't known was missing until now. Leora's fingers tentatively touched his, the sensation sending shivers across their bond. The drift zones change in 3 days. We must be ready to move by then. As they stood together in the moonlight, the invisible thread between them strengthened, weaving their fates together in ways neither yet understood. Hidden paths. The eastern drift zones stretched before them like a fever dream, floating islands of rock connected by gravitational currents invisible to the eye but vital to navigation. Nyx felt the subtle pulls and shifts beneath his boots as he led Leora across a narrow stone bridge that hadn't existed yesterday and would likely disappear tomorrow. We're close, he murmured, consulting his specialized mapping equipment. The resonance you described, I'm detecting something similar about 2 kilometers ahead. In the 5 days since leaving Nova Haven, their bond had deepened in unexpected ways. Nyx found himself anticipating Leora's needs before she expressed them, while she seemed to understand his navigational instincts without explanation. There's a patrol ahead, Leora whispered suddenly, her crystalline features tensing. Human extremists, the ones who call themselves purists. Nyx nodded, having sensed something through their connection. They ducked beneath an overhang just as voices carried across the rocky terrain, said they were spotted heading this way. A traitor and his crystal pet? The voice was hard, contemptuous. Command wants them alive if possible, dead if necessary. Pressed together in the narrow hiding space, Nyx became acutely aware of Leora's proximity. Her silver hair brushed against his cheek, sending a tingle through their bond that had nothing to do with danger, and everything to do with the growing attraction he'd been fighting. Your heart rate has increased, Leora observed quietly, her breath warm against his neck. Just adrenaline, he lied, though the knowing look in her iridescent eyes told him their bond revealed the truth. Once the patrol passed, They continued their journey deeper into the drift zones. By nightfall, they reached a cavern system that hummed with strange energies. The walls contained veins of the same crystalline substance that gave Leora's people their distinctive appearance. "This place," Leora breathed, her fingers tracing the crystal formations. "It's sacred. A nexus point between our peoples that was lost to time." As she explored the cavern, Nick set up their modest camp. Through their bond, he felt her excitement, her reverence for this discovery. It was becoming harder to remember that their connection was merely expedient, a means to an end. "The harmony crystal should be deeper within," Leora said, returning to his side, "but the pathways will be treacherous. We should rest before proceeding." They sat beside each other near the small heat generator, sharing a meal of synthesized proteins. In the dim light, Leora's natural luminescence created a gentle glow between them. "You never explained why it's called the harmony crystal," Nick said, watching the play of light across her features. "It's said to reveal truth between disparate minds," she replied. "Our histories tell of a time when humans and Saphirans could communicate without misunderstanding, could see beyond their differences." Her eyes met his. "Before the Great Divide, when fear drove our peoples apart. You believe this crystal can prevent war. I believe it can reveal the manipulations behind the current conflicts," Leora said firmly. "Show who benefits from our mutual destruction." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Leora tentatively placed her hand over his. The contact sent waves of warmth through their bond. "I misjudged humans," she admitted softly. "My teachers spoke of your kind as impulsive, unpredictable, dangerous." Her fingers intertwined with his. "They never mentioned your capacity for compassion, for beauty." Nix felt himself drawn toward her, the pull both physical and something deeper, something tied to the soul guardian bond that now seemed less like a burden and more like a gift. "Leora," he whispered, her name like a question and an answer at once. She leaned closer, her crystalline features catching the light as their faces drew near. The first touch of her lips against his sent a cascade of sensation through their bond. Wonder, desire, and something deeper that neither was ready to name. When they separated, breathless, the luminescent connection between them pulsed with new intensity, visible even in the cavern's dim light. "The bond," Nick said, his voice rough. "Is this part of it?" "No," Leora replied, her fingers gently tracing his jawline. "This is something else entirely." They spent the night wrapped in each other's arms, discovering the places where human warmth and Saphiran light could merge into something transcendent. Through their bond flowed emotions too complex for words: vulnerability and strength, desire and tenderness. By morning, when they prepared to venture deeper into the cavern system, something fundamental had changed between them. The mission remained urgent, but now carried personal stakes neither had anticipated. "Whatever happens," Nick said as they stood at the threshold of a downward passage, "we face it together." Leora's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Together," she agreed, her eyes reflecting a depth of feeling that went beyond any diplomatic mission. Little did they know that deep within the caverns, the harmony crystal awaited, along with revelations that would test their newfound bond to its breaking point. Fractured trust. The deeper chambers of the cavern system glowed with bioluminescent fungi and crystal formations that responded to Leora's presence, brightening as she passed. Nix followed close behind, his mapping equipment detecting anomalous energy readings that grew stronger with each step forward. "The resonance is incredible," he murmured, studying the fluctuating patterns on his scanner. "It's almost as if the entire cavern is a single organism." Leora nodded, her silver hair catching the ambient light. "My people believe these places are living memories of when our worlds were one." She paused before an archway covered in ancient symbols. "These glyphs speak of the sundering, when fear drove humans and Saphirans apart." As she traced the symbols with her fingertips, Nix felt a wave of sadness through their bond. The intimacy they had shared the previous night had deepened their connection, making her emotions almost as clear to him as his own. "What aren't you telling me about the harmony crystal?" he asked quietly. Leora's hand stilled against the ancient stone. Her luminescent strands dimmed slightly, a response Nix had come to recognize as hesitation or concern. "The crystal doesn't just reveal truth," she finally said, turning to face him. "It amplifies the dominant thoughts of those who wield it. In the right hands, it could foster understanding between our species. In the wrong hands, it could weaponize prejudice, Nix concluded, a chill running through him. Why didn't you tell me this before? Would you have helped me if you knew? Before he could answer, a distant rumble shook the cavern. Dust and small fragments rained from above. Someone's breached the outer chambers, Nix said, drawing his pulse pistol. We need to move. They hurried deeper into the labyrinth, following the strengthening energy signature. The passage eventually opened into a vast chamber where gravity seemed lighter, allowing crystal formations to float suspended in midair. At the center, hovering within a convergence of energy currents, was a crystal unlike any other, shifting between translucence and opacity, between colors and void, pulsing with what seemed like conscious rhythm. The harmony crystal, Leora breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. As she stepped toward it, Nix caught her arm. Wait, you still haven't told me everything. Who sent you for this? Who exactly are you planning to give it to? The bond between them tensed with her reluctance. The Sephiran Council believes the crystal can protect our people from human aggression, she admitted. They intend to use it to influence human perception of us. At influence? Nix's voice hardened. You mean control. Not control, guide. Leora's eyes pleaded for understanding. Only until the danger passes. And who decides when that is? Your council? The same people who've been isolating your species for generations. The betrayal stung more than he expected, sharpened by the intimacy they'd shared. You used me. No. Leora reached for him, but he stepped back. Nix, I was sent with that purpose, yes. But what's grown between us, what I feel for you, that's real. The bond has shown me there's another way. Another explosion closer now interrupted them. Through the chamber entrance came 6 figures. 3 human purists and 3 Sephiran extremists. Temporarily allied despite their mutual hatred. The traitors, snarled the lead purist, a scarred woman with hatred in her eyes. Step away from the crystal. Your misguided bond is an abomination, added a male Sephiran, his crystalline features sharp with disgust. Ambassador Leora, you have betrayed your kind by tying yourself to this human. Nix and Leora stood back to back as their enemies spread out around them. Through their bond flowed determination, fear, and something more urgent. A plan forming in Leora's mind that she couldn't verbalize in front of their attackers. The crystal belongs to no one, Leora declared loudly. Its purpose is harmony, not division. Pretty words from a species planning to use it against us, the purist leader sneered. We've intercepted your council's communications. We know exactly what you planned. Nix felt Leora's shock through their bond. She hadn't known her mission was compromised. But beneath that shock was resolution. When she subtly reached for his hand, he took it despite his anger. Their fingers intertwined, and through the touch came understanding. The fight erupted in seconds. Pulse weapons discharged, crystalline energy projectiles flew. Nix and Leora moved as one, their bond allowing perfect coordination as they fought their way toward the harmony crystal. A shot grazed Nix's shoulder, burning through his protective gear. He felt Leora's pain response through their bond as if she had been wounded herself. Now, Leora called as they reached the center of the chamber. Together they thrust their joined hands into the energy field surrounding the crystal. The sensation was electric, overwhelming. Every memory, every emotion they had shared flooding between them with perfect clarity. Nix saw Leora's initial mission, but also her growing doubt, her awakening feelings for him, her realization that the Council's plan was wrong, and Leora saw his suspicion, his hurt but also his growing admiration for her, his desire to protect both their peoples from those who would drive them to war. The harmony crystal pulsed once, brilliantly, before emitting a shockwave of energy that swept through the chamber. When it touched the extremists, they froze, human and Sephiran alike, as the hatred and prejudice driving them was suddenly laid bare, reflected back at them in all its ugly irrationality. In the silence that followed, Nix and Leora stood trembling, still connected both by touch and by the soul guardian bond that now shimmered visibly between them. I'm sorry, she whispered, her eyes meeting his. I should have told you everything from the beginning. Nix felt the absolute truth of her words through their connection. The anger that had flared between them wasn't gone, but it was tempered by understanding. What happens now? He asked, looking at the crystal still hovering before them. We make a choice, Leora replied, one that neither of our peoples expected. Starlit Promise. 3 months later, the observation platform overlooking the newly established Harmony settlement hummed with activity. What had begun as a small outpost at the edge of the drift zones had grown into a thriving community where humans and Saphirans worked and lived together. At its center stood a specially constructed chamber housing the Harmony crystal, its energy regulated and accessible to any who wished to experience its truth-revealing properties. Nyx leaned against the platform railing, watching the settlement below. The path to this moment had been fraught with political resistance, threats from extremists, and endless negotiations. Both the Human Coalition and the Saphiran Council had initially demanded the crystal be surrendered to their respective authorities. Both had been refused. "Contemplating your handiwork?" Leora's voice came from behind him, warm and familiar. He turned to find her approaching, her silver hair adorned with ceremonial crystal shards that caught the light of the setting sun. In the months since their adventure in the cavern, she had resigned her ambassadorial position to help lead the Harmony initiative alongside Nyx. "Our handiwork," he corrected, reaching for her hand. The soul guardian bond between them pulsed with contentment as their fingers intertwined. The council representatives seemed less hostile today. "They're beginning to understand this is the only sustainable path forward," Leora agreed, "especially since more young Saphirans arrive each day, seeking connection rather than isolation." They watched as below them, a group of human children played alongside Saphiran younglings, their laughter carrying up to the platform. The games they invented incorporated elements from both cultures, creating something entirely new in the process. "The extremists are still a threat," Nyx said, his thoughts turning to the security reports he'd reviewed that morning. "Both human and Saphiran." "Yes, but they fight against the tide now, not with it." Leora's free hand came up to touch his face, her fingers cool against his skin. "Fear loses its power when exposed to the light." Through their bond, Nyx felt her certainty, and beneath it, a deeper current of emotion that had grown steadily stronger since that first night in the caverns. What had begun as an expedient connection forced by circumstance had transformed into something neither of them had imagined possible. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said, turning to face her fully. "The soul guardian bond, you said it would be fulfilled once we found the crystal, that we could dissolve it if we wanted." Concern flickered across Leora's features, and through their connection, "Yes, the ritual is simple enough. Do you wish to be free of it?" Instead of answering directly, Nyx reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object. A band woven from strands of metal and crystal, representing both their worlds. "I was thinking we might strengthen it instead," he said softly. "Among my people, we have a different kind of bond. One chosen freely, without crisis or necessity." Understanding dawned in Leora's eyes, turning uncertainty to joy that radiated through their connection. "A permanent claim," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A promise. If you'll have me." Nyx held the band between them, not because fate threw us together, or because politics demanded it, but because I choose you, Leora, because what grew between us is more valuable than any crystal. Leora's luminescent strands brightened with emotion as she took the band from his hand and placed it on her wrist, where it settled against her crystalline skin as if made for her. "My people have a saying," she replied, her eyes shining. "What is claimed in truth cannot be severed by distance or time." Her hands framed his face. "I claim you, Nyx Vanner, not as my soul guardian, but as my heart's choice, mine, and no one else's." When their lips met, the bond between them flared so brightly that observers in the settlement below looked up, thinking a new star had appeared in the evening sky. Perhaps in a way one had. A light born from the union of two worlds that had once feared each other's differences, now discovering the strength that came from embracing them. Later that night, as they lay together in their quarters overlooking the settlement, Leora traced patterns on Nyx's skin, her touch creating shimmers of light that followed her fingers. "What do you think will happen when the first children are born here?" she asked, her head resting on his chest. "Children of both our worlds." Nyx smiled, running his hand along the curve of her shoulder. "They'll have the best of both. Your people's connection to energy and light, my people's adaptability and resilience. There'll be something entirely new," Leora mused. "Neither fully human nor Saphiran." "They'll be bridges," Nyx replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. living proof that what divides us matters less than what we can create together. Through their bond flowed contentment, possibility, and the quiet certainty that what they had built, both between themselves and for their peoples, was only the beginning. The Harmony settlement glowed beneath them, a beacon in the darkness of space, while above them countless stars witnessed their promise to one another. A promise that had begun with a claiming, transformed through understanding, and culminated in a choice freely made beneath the light of distant suns.